In part 6, we're going to talk all about how being able to access discernment allows you to choose your values over your automatic patterns. Up till now, everything we've learned has been preparing us for this moment. Awareness, attention, safety, and self-understanding and awareness all come together here. Discernment is the ability to pause, see clearly, and choose intentionally instead of reacting automatically. And this is where healing begins to change the way you move through your everyday life. I love using the example of a simple text exchange because it's something we all deal with every day, really. So imagine you've texted someone and hours go by without a response. What happens next? For most of us, our mind starts immediately filling in the blanks of the information we don't have with assumptions that are based off of our past experiences. They're upset, I said something wrong, maybe I made a weird face or I didn't punctuate enough. They're pulling away from me, they're ignoring me. We're anticipating rejection or some kind of mistake that we've made coming back to haunt us in some way. But the question I want to ask you is, in those moments when you're thinking all of those possible catastrophes could be at play, how many of them are interpretations? Our minds do something really remarkable. They're constantly creating stories. Reality might be they haven't responded. And that's the only observable fact we have in front of us. But the story you're creating in your head, they're mad at me. They don't care. I'm too much. And the story starts to feel real, even though it may not be based in reality itself. Remember, your brain loves prediction. It does not like uncertainty. No one does. It is uncomfortable. It is not fun. It doesn't feel good in your body, and it doesn't feel safe, especially to a chronic overthinker. That's usually where we go first when we don't have certainty, is into thinking, planning, preparing, predicting. When information is missing in part of the puzzle, our brain starts to connect dots. It tries to explain, prepare, protect. And these stories are not evidence that you're crazy, you're rational. They're just evidence that your brain is trying to reduce uncertainty. So the goal isn't necessarily to stop making stories. I don't think emotionally healthy people stop interpreting other people and situations necessarily. They become more curious about their own interpretations. Curiosity replaces certainty. Instead of saying, I know what this means, they begin asking, I know how this feels. I think I know what this could mean. I at least know what my automatic response and experience wants me to think this means. But I wonder if there could be other possibilities. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they haven't seen the message. Maybe they need time. Maybe my first interpretation is right, that it's something about me that they're not wanting to respond to. But maybe it's wrong. Curiosity creates room for reality, an exploration of other possibilities. And that room is incredibly important. Part of what we're building in attention training, in our peripheral awareness, is the capacity to hold both our direct attention on an object of our choosing and peripheral awareness. Now, that peripheral awareness connects to our emotional brain and our unconscious attachment experiences. And when we build the capacity to hold direct attention on an object of our choosing, maybe in this scenario, it's our body response. I'm noticing a fear of abandonment, of rejection, of being judged or criticized. And at the same time, I am holding open context. I'm holding space for the possibility that I might be wrong and that maybe I ought to ask more questions and let some time pass and calm my nervous system before I jump into creating narratives and assuming I know what's going on. Keep in mind, Like I said, in this unconscious brain lives your experiences, and your experiences color your perception. Think back on everything that we've learned up to now. Your adaptations, your nervous system, your protective strategies, your attention, all of your inner roommates. All of those influence the lens that you see the world through. If you have a history of rejection, you're going to notice rejection far sooner. Someone who grew up walking on eggshells may hear criticism where none was really intended. Maybe it was just feedback or boundaries being communicated, and that's okay. Someone who wasn't believed when they spoke about what their needs were, what their emotions were, what their experiences were, they may assume quickly they're being dismissed. And that doesn't make them foolish or crazy. It makes them humans that adapted. In this space of uncertainty, I think one of the wisest phrases we can learn is, I could be wrong. Which triggers more uncertainty, right? And this isn't something you say to yourself because you shouldn't trust yourself. It's because humility is a superpower. We need to be humble enough to recognize that our perspective is always limited by our experience. Humility is not a weakness. It is openness, that open awareness of context and other possibilities. It's the willingness to keep learning. It's the willingness to update when new information arrives. And that is one of the greatest gifts awareness gives us. One of my favorite quotes, and I might not get this exactly right, but it's Charles Darwin. And, we all think of survival of the fittest as, the strongest one wins. But that's not actually what Darwinism is. Charles Darwin said that survival of the fittest isn't about who's the strongest and the fastest. It's about who's the most adaptable. Who adapts to their environment the quickest and the most skillfully in a way that ensures their continued survival. Now, in this world where we're not running from tigers anymore, we are not just surviving, we are thriving. So how do we adapt in this body that learned to run from tigers, in this nervous system that jumps into certainty as a survival mechanism that we did need at one point in our lives and in the evolutionary history of humans? When you're not in literal danger, you can create the space to become more flexible, to adapt, to be more resilient, to open up your awareness, to open up to other possibilities and other options with context and increased perspective. When we operate like this is where discernment lives. Not by distrusting yourself, but by holding your interpretations with honesty and humility. Noticing the mind that your story is telling, respecting why it's telling that story, and being willing to gather a little more information before you organize your life around your conclusions and assumptions. I think it's one of the kindest things we can offer ourselves and also other people in our lives. So if you remember one thing today, reality and our interpretation of reality are not always the same thing. You don't have to shame your first interpretation. It probably developed for a good reason, and there's probably some information in there that you need to pull from. But you also don't have to hand it unquestioned authority. You can become curious, you can stay humble, and you can gather more information. And that is where discernment begins.